What up guys, it's Dragon for Life here today and I'm back with another video. Now today's video we're going to be talking about how to beat characters with Immortality. Now Immortality has to be one of the most OP abilities or superpowers anybody could ever have, because you're basically unkillable. And there are many different types of Immortality that work in different ways that a lot of people don't understand, and it's far more complex than a lot of people think that it is. But there are ways to actually beat somebody with Immortality. I know a lot of people think that it's impossible, but there is defined ways to beat them. Now, before I get into this, I do want to go and explain a little bit about Immortality, because I know a lot of people have this incorrect. They think an immortal person is just somebody that, can live forever but can still die by conventional means, like, somebody like killing them or through disease. But that is incorrect. If you know the actual terminology of Immortality, you would know that it's far more difficult. Now, people usually say, oh no, that's invincibility, where you can't be killed by this stuff. Yeah, that's a part of it, but invincibility, you can actually kill somebody who's invincible. It's just there's a certain ways that you have to do it, and there's certain steps, which I will be making a video on that in the future. I'll be making a video on all these superpowers and how to beat them. But Immortality and invincibility, they're kind of similar but not exactly. If somebody's invincible, they can still die of old age or possibly a disease. So no, invincibility is not what they mean. Immortality, I'll get into what it means, but they also say they have eternal life, or like that's called eternal life, but eternal life is different, and I'll get into it. So let's explain, what is Immortality then? Because a lot of people are kind of confused on what Immortality is, and there's a lot of misinformation about it. And I'll be honest, it does annoy me a little bit, because I do hear a lot of stupidity from people saying, they just because they're immortal doesn't mean they can't die. No, that's what immortal means. They cannot die. Immortal basically means a person who cannot die from anything. Basically old age, disease, or somebody trying to kill them. So external and internal damage will not work against them. An immortal person should be able to survive and come back no matter how many times. Now, there are different types of Immortality, which I'll also go in depth into, because depending on which one there is, it's going to have a different levels of difficulty on dealing with them. But Immortality as a whole, even with all of them, encompasses it as not dying at all. So if anybody says anything else like, oh, that's invincibility, no, it's not. Invincibility means physical or magical attacks cannot kill this person. They can still die, but from other means, usually old age. And when you say they only live forever, that's eternal life. Somebody who has eternal life means that they can live forever. Eternal meaning forever, and life, so your life will be forever. Obviously, you will still die of disease or if somebody tries to kill you, but eternal life is what they get wrong with Immortality. And then there's also terms like eternal youth, which means that they can be young forever. So this character might, still get older, but their body will still look young. So yeah, that's eternal life, not immortal. So every time I hear people say immortal, I'm like, you're just dumb. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. Because I remember when Zamasu came into play, or Zamasu came into play, people were saying, why don't they just obliterate him, do this and that, he should have died from this. And they got mad when Trunks cut him up in half, and you had his astral form amalgamating with the universe itself. They're saying that it doesn't make any sense, he should have been dead, he should just die. And I'm just like, he's immortal, that's not how it works. But with that being said, let's go into the different types of Immortality. These are not actual terms of Immortality. It's just what I call it personally. There's what I call partial Immortality. This is what we see from somebody like Doomsday, where they can die, they can be destroyed, but they get resurrected every time. So they can consistently die, but keep on coming back to life over and over and over again. So you can destroy them, but they will always come back. Depending on the specific characters, some characters might come back a long time in the future, some characters might come back right away. So it really depends. Some characters I've seen in other fiction, they've died and came back quite a bit after. Like somebody like Asura from Asura's Wrath. I don't know if he's 100% immortal. Actually, he's not, because he does die in the end of the game. But he does have partial immortality, because he keeps on coming back to life after his death. So that's partial immortality. Then there is complete immortality, which is basically somebody who cannot die at all. all. No matter what attacks you do to them, they do not die and come back. They're just there. Like what we saw with Zamasu, no matter what attack you hit him with, he was just still there. He would not die. He would not leave. Whereas Doomsday, he's immortal, but he dies and comes back. So that's different. And there's also a little bit two different ways for immortality, even in that sense, because there is the physical immortality and spiritual immortality. Now, physical immortality basically means that no matter what damage you do to the physical body, it will not be, it will not die. You can try to disintegrate it completely, it will not work. And there's also two ways that that would happen too, but I'll get into that a little bit later. Let's talk about the other, form of it, the spiritual aspect. That means that your body is not immortal, so they can obliterate the body, but by obliterating the body, the soul still lives, and the soul can still, do something. And we've seen this with Merge Zamasu and with a character named Onslaught from Marvel. Now, Merge Zamasu, when his physical body was destroyed, this was a loophole around his, his body's, immortality. Because his body was immortal. Every time Trunks or somebody would attack it, it would instantly regenerate and repair itself, like, instantly. And when he fused with Goku Black was not immortal, so the combination of those two kind of messed up his immortality. But he was still immortal, so you couldn't kill him, altogether, but you could at least destroy his physical body now, because he has a non-immortal body with an immortal body, which makes it not fully immortal, whereas his spirit or his soul was still immortal, and he was able to amalgamate with the universes itself and combine with it. Same thing happened with a character named Onslaught from Marvel, where he was, I think it was a combination of Professor Xavier and Magneto, both their psychic minds kind of linked together and created this beast. And the Incredible Hulk in that one completely destroys it, and he destroys the body, but it leaks out in his energy form, and this being is immortal. So it leaked out in his energy form, and it kind of like did this combination thing too. So it wasn't killed through that means either. So yeah, that's what I consider spiritual immortality compared to physical immortality. Physical means your body, no matter what damage they do to your body, it will not be destroyed. Whereas spiritual, you can still have your body destroyed, but your spirit will live forever, and you can do stuff like they did, where they amalgamated with other things, or just be a non-corporeal entity. So meaning that you can't physically, not only could you not normally physically harm them before, but you can't even hurt them anymore. It's like punching a ghost, but they can hit you back. So it's very hard to beat something like that. And then with the physical immortality, there's two ways to also go through this, and I'll call this I call these two invincible immortality and regenerative immortality. Now, invincible immortality is basically like people saying, oh, it's invincible, you can't be beaten, and that is somewhat a part of immortality, depending on what you have. Now, this version of immortality basically means your body is invincible. So, not only are you immortal and you can't die through other means, you're also invincible, meaning no matter what damage they do to you, your body will not be, damaged, and it wouldn't need to regenerate and stuff. So let's say that somebody tries to cut off your head, you cannot cut off their head. You try to burn away their skin, it will not work. You try to, use magic or anything against them, it will not work, because their body should be invincible and invulnerable to all forms of damage. So no matter how much you hit them, it's basically their body's so solid that you can't scratch them, you can't make them bleed, you can't chop off their parts, you can't burn them, you can't hurt them in any way. Physically, if you try to do damage to them, they will be like a tank that has no limit to their durability, like somebody who's invincible, but they can still die through old age and maybe disease or another way, but I'll make that for another video. But yeah, so the invincible immortal, and then you have the regenerative immortal, which is like, Zamasu, where you can damage him, you can cut off his parts and stuff like that, but the thing is, it doesn't work, it doesn't mean anything, because he can regenerate completely and perfectly, and this can help him out. Now, some people might say, well, that might be a little bit of a hindrance compared to, the invincible immortality, because that means you can take all the damage and tank it, and your body doesn't have any physical damage at all, whereas the other one, it can get damaged and it needs to repair so it can slow down. But it can also be a little dangerous, that one too, and possibly even more dangerous than the invincible immortality, because, and they didn't show this in the manga, I don't know why, or the anime or the manga or whatever, for Zamasu, but if you do, like, let's say chop off a part of them, since they can regenerate, they will regenerate that other part, meaning that it will be another version of themselves that will be immortal. So you can cut them into many pieces, obliterate them into particles. They will either come back as a whole out of nowhere, or have the parts of them splattered, or a little bit of molecules creating full-on immortal versions of themselves. You see this with Lobo. Lobo has the ability where he is hard to kill. I don't know if he's immortal, but his blood was splattered and he was able to create full versions of himself through the blood. So there are characters that are immortal, that the regeneration aspect, that if you cut off pieces of them, they will regenerate completely there, so you'll have multiple clones of them. I know we do see this a little bit in the manga, but that was more of them calling through different dimensions or timelines of him instead of me cut up. I could be wrong maybe, but yeah, that is another thing that you can get from the regenerative immortality is if they destroy parts of you, you can come back. Now some people say, well, how do they come back if they're completely obliterated physically, disintegrated, like how we saw with Kid Buu? Well, the way they do that for them coming back is, since they're immortal, there'll probably be like some magical aspect to it. So it might be like you can wipe their, every trace of them out of existence, but they can reality warpers kind of warp their body back into reality. So no matter how many times you obliterate them, they can warp back into reality, kind of just like, a partial immortal being, like Doomsday. He can come back fully even though he's completely obliterated. But regenerative, immortality is kind of like partial immortality a little, but not quite, because you can definitely kill them and they come back. This one, you're not killing them, you're just wiping out every trace of their existence, but their trace of their existence is always going to come back because their immortality itself. So if somebody is that OP that they cannot die or keep on coming back, even if it's partial immortality or invincible immortality or regenerative immortality, then how the hell do you beat somebody who's immortal? Well, the only ways to beat them is to have powers of your own, but you need to have select few powers, and you can't really beat them through technology. You might be able to beat them through magic and just regular powers alone, or like extreme powers alone, but you can't beat them through technology. So let's get through how to beat somebody who's immortal. Now, a partial immortal person, you kill them, they come back, so basically you win then, but if they keep on coming back, you're never going to fully end them. Whereas other mortalities, you have to eat them right there. You have to completely, they're right there, they won't leave, so they'll stay there. So how do you beat something like that? For all of them, there's actually a few ways that works with all of them. Now, one is sealing. This does not beat them in a physical sense of defeating them or killing them, but this beats them in a sense of stopping them and immobilizing them. Now, the only thing I don't like about sealing, abilities or magic using against somebody who's immortal is, usually in stories, it doesn't always stay forever. You can seal somebody, sometimes it might, but usually it isn't always the case that they stay, they stay sealed away. Usually it's just like, oh, they might come back at some point and they come back in the future. So it's not a surefire way of beating them, but it's a surefire way of stopping them for at least a certain amount of time, or even maybe if the writer doesn't want to bring them back, a complete amount of time, like in Naruto, where we had Shikamaru beat I forgot what his name was, the Lord Joshi or Yashi, whatever guy. He was immortal and he trapped him in a place and he was stuck there. So you can either set traps and get them stuck in a place, or you can use a sealing magic or something sealing and seal them in a different either dimension or as an inanimate object, or you can do both. And that is the best usually conventional way that people do it, characters do it, because a lot of characters, for the other way to do it, you need to be extremely powerful. But this way, you can be powerful, but not too powerful. You just need to have some, unique skill or ability to be able to handle them. Also, I like to, I forgot to mention, is also depending on the person's strength, because just because a character is immortal doesn't mean they're going to be very powerful. You have characters like Vandal Savage who are immortal, but they're still human, so he can't really do anything too crazy. So if you do have like an immortal being like him, it's a lot easier depending on their power. If they're decently powerful and immortal, then it's a big threat. But if they're human levels or just a little bit of a powerful, you can just lock them in some prison, or do some other stuff like For one, you can throw them into a black hole where they will basically be stuck in that black hole, and or transported to another dimension where they can't do anything. Or you can just inject them into outer space and they'll be frozen still until they somehow land on a planet or get unfrozen by going by a star. But then usually if they're doing that, then they're going to be stuck in the star, which they're going to be infinitely burned. And we saw this with in I think it was in JoJo Part 2. It was against one of the Stone Pillar Men, the last guy in the ending. He was immortal, and they injected him to outer space, and he basically froze up, and he stayed frozen for the rest of time. So that's also another way to beat them, but that's usually weak characters that have immortality. So when it comes to that, it's very, very easy. You can either lock them up in some insane prison, you can throw them into a star where they'll burn up forever, throw them inside a volcano, trap them in the core of a planet, throw them in a black hole, just throw them in deep space. You can also use like I said, the ceiling magic, or just trap them like how, Shikamaru did, because that guy was strong, but he wasn't that powerful. You can chop off the limbs and separate them and put them in different stuff, like boxes and stuff, and that's usually how they stop an immortal being, by chopping them up and putting them in places, even the most powerful ones. But like I said, to people like Zamasu's level, or Merge Zamasu's level, that way is not going to work. But sealing magic is definitely the best. I say magic because usually when they seal, it's usually through magic. But yeah, sealing, like I said, there's different types of sealing. There is spatial sealing, and I think I would call the other one inanimate object sealing. What this means is basically spatial sealing is you trap them in another dimension. There's you have either a pocket dimension or an alternate dimension or whatever, and you just throw them in there and they're sealed into there, and they can't get out unless they're powerful enough to break through dimensions. But they're usually sealed into another dimension by the sealing magic, or they're made into an inanimate object. Sometimes people might put a sealing where they turn to an inanimate object, or just stone, like how Medusa does it. Or you can have kind of a two-way thing where you do it through, you put them inside an inanimate object, like how you use the mafuba to trap them into a rice cooker or a jar. So that's another form of it. I still think the best way to do it would to be a combination of both, where you make them an inanimate person, like they're an inanimate object, or inanimate, meaning that they cannot move or think, and also trap them in a dimension. Because if you trap them in a dimension, if they're powerful enough, they can break through dimensions and they can tear through a dimension and just come back, or get strong enough to come back. And if they're an inanimate character, that is easy. That's a more powerful, sealing. But if they have, resistance, or an inanimate, I guess you can say, warping ability, then it won't work on them. Like, for example, we had Super Vegito versus Buhan, where he tried to hit Buhan, and Buhan turned him into candy, and he thought he would stop him, because usually the people who turns into candy can't move or do anything. They're inanimate. But he was still able to move and fight because he had resistance to it because of his power. So you might have characters that are immortal, but so powerful that even if you do that, they will be resistant to it, and making them an inanimate object might stop them for a bit, but they can come out of it. So I think it's better to do it through those two ways, because then you would have to be extremely powerful. You would have to have resistance to people turning you into an object, and also breaking out of a dimension, which will take even more time and be more harder to do. But I think the best way, and the only actual way to actually end an immortal being completely, is to erase them out of existence. Now, some people will say, well, isn't that killing them? No, it's not. Killing them means if you die, you will still go to a different plane of existence, either hell, heaven, or purgatory, and you will still have your soul connected. That's why there's the spiritual or soul immortality that I'm talking about, where you can destroy the physical, but the soul will still be there. And you can't really kill something like that. So if you have the ability to erase somebody out of existence, and I'm not talking about going back in time and erasing them out of existence. Well, you can actually kind of do that too. If they, say, you can go back in time before they became immortal and wipe them out before then you can do that. But then there's some characters like Zamasu, like I said, who live in Dragon Ball universe, where they have alternate timelines and stuff. So going back in time, wiping out another one will not stop that one. That one will still be immortal, depending on that. But if it's like Marvel or DC, you can just go back in time and stop them before they became immortal and end them there. If you do that, then it stops their immortality. But then it creates a bigger problem with, messing with time itself. But erasure through just pure power alone. This requires usually high level or high end characters, or characters who have this high level technique. We see this in Dragon Ball with the Hakai technique, where the gods of destruction can use it, and in the manga, Goku can use it too. But not, we haven't seen it in the anime. We don't know if he can do it in the anime, but we know definitively in the manga he can do that. So yeah, you can use a technique like Hakai to wipe him out. And the only reason that Zamasu survived was because he had the time ring, which put him outside of the timelines and put him in a protective bubble. So when Beerus used the Hakai technique, it wiped out all the Zamasus that didn't get the time ring before it, but the ones that did get the time ring were safe from it because it has no effect on them. So that can also work. But then we had the more extreme version where we had Zeno's erasure, which he's more powerful, so it makes sense. But his one, he completely erased him out of existence. So yeah, usually the best way to do it is complete erasure, but it takes either an insane technique or insanely powerful being to do it. So this is not something simple. It's not a weak or conventional level of power. Powered character can do this. You have to be a high end, top tier character to do this. Zeno, even though people might say he's not as strong as people think, he's still really powerful and really overpowered, especially with his eraser ability. We gotta admit that. So yeah. It's either like, and I'm talking about the most powerful like immortals. I'm not talking about regular human immortals, because there's countless ways to beat them. But very powerful one, you have to do sealing, either through putting them in another dimension, making them inanimate, or both, or doing both, putting them in another dimension and making them inanimate. But if you want to completely beat them and get rid of them, you have to have the ability to erase people out of existence, either a technique or be so powerful that you can erase them out of existence. And that's the only way, because if you do that, now not only are you erasing their physical, you're erasing their spiritual, you're also erasing them from time itself. You're erasing them as a whole. And some people might say, well, then how is that possible? How are you able to kill himself? Usually the characters that do that have the ability to warp reality or control that universe themselves. Like Zeno, he's the master of those universes. So it really requires, a guy that is the most powerful. So that's really the only way to beat Immortality, if I'm being honest, is to do that. And that's the definitive way to beat them if you don't want to just stop them for a bit and they come back. This is one way to get rid of them completely, is to obliterate them from existence, because you're not killing them. Killing them, you're destroying some part of them and there's still some part existing. To do this, you're wiping them out of existence. Now some people might say, well, can you do this with soul erasing abilities? Yeah, but no. Here's why. To erase somebody's soul is powerful, but that doesn't mean you can erase somebody's soul who's immortal. If somebody's soul is infinite, just because you can erase, powerful being souls, does that mean you can erase an infinite soul? No, I think for you to do that, you need to erase everything, just like how Zeno does, because he erases all of existence, not just the soul. Everything is down to the soul. That's a soul level manipulation, but that's the highest end, and it requires other stuff with it. But yeah. Erasing somebody out of existence is not killing them. It's just making it so that they never existed, or that they were never meant to be here to begin with. So that's completely different. That's the only way I can think of to beat somebody who's immortal. Any other ways, you're pretty much screwed, especially against an overpowered immortal character. It's kind of nearly nigh impossible to beat somebody on that level. So yeah, that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hopefully I explained it perfectly enough and gone more in depth with Immortality, because I do get annoyed a lot when I hear people explain what Immortality is. I'm just like, you sound dumb. You don't know what the hell Immortality is, clearly, and they say it wrong. And I want people to know that there's different types. The partial Immortality, it's a little bit easier because you can kill him and at least have some time off. Like Doomsday, he doesn't come back consistently all the time. It takes some time for him to come back, so at least you can have some time off. Whereas the other ones is kind of, they're right there. You can't really get rid of them. You can't really get rid of them unless you completely erase them or trap them. And Invincible or Regeneration, you can all do that. It's just that when it comes to the Regeneration one, if they have multiple versions of themselves, it just takes more time to wipe them all out compared to the Invincible one. So yeah, that's how you beat an immortal character. I hope you guys enjoyed, and stay tuned for next time.